citizens convinced the Meccan Muslims to emigrate for their own safety and for the fate of Islam. One by one, group by group, the exodus began. The Meccans realized the plan was unfolding as they had less and less Muslims to persecute. They argued over what to do. Should they exile Muhammad? Should they leave him in Medina? Finally, it was decided to kill the Prophet and end his revolution for good. When Muhammad was left only with his faithful companion, Abu Bakr, his cousin Ali, and a handful of believers, he decided to emigrate himself. He was to be assassinated the same night he planned to leave. The Meccans waited secretly outside his home while he was preparing to leave. They were so cautious that when Muhammad himself passed by them, they failed to recognize him. Muhammad met with Abu Bakr, and together they fled Mecca and took refuge in a nearby cave. Converging upon the Prophet's house, when the Meccans finally stormed in, to their fury and astonishment, they found his cousin Ali sleeping in his place. Bent upon killing him, the Meccans hired a tracker to pursue Muhammad's trail. Standing at the mouth of the cave, in which the Prophet and Abu Bakr lay hiding, the tracker said that Muhammad was either in the cave or had descended to the heavens. Abu Bakr heard this, and his heart sank. "Fear not, God is with us," said the Prophet. "I fear not for myself," went on Abu Bakr, "but for you, for if I die, I am but an ordinary mortal. But if you die, it will mean death to faith and spirit. Even so, fear not," assured the Prophet. "We are not two in this cave, there is a third, God." Had the tracker looked in the cave, he would have caught the two refugees, but he decided the cave was too small and too dangerous for anyone to hide in, and thus abandoned his search. The Prophet took his last look at Mecca. Emotions welled up in his heart. Mecca was his birthplace. He lived there as a child and as a man, and had received the divine call. It was the place where his forefathers had lived and flourished since the time of Ishmael. With these thoughts, he had a last long look at it and said, "Mecca, thou art dearer to me than any other place in the world, but thy people would not let me live here," and set out towards his new home, Medina, and so closed a great chapter in the life of the Prophet.
It is a common experience in the history of faiths that prophets do migrate from place to place, seeking a homeland where they may practice. This is true in the case of Medina as well. The sun that had risen on Mecca had now come to shine on that city, Medina, and forevermore it will be known as Medina al-Munawwara, the city of light, the Prophet's city. After the traditional welcome ceremony when the Prophet arrived, the people were jubilant. The voices were raised high. The children were singing songs to welcome him into the city, to show their happiness and joy that the light of God, the light of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, had entered their humble abode. In loud voices, the children chanted the following poem. You can imagine the joy. You can sense from these voices the spirit that was lifted up when this messenger came into their city. But then the work had to begin. The work to bring together all these contending sections of a society. Muslims were a minority, but they were there. Jews, pagan Arabs, all had to form a society. And this is what the Prophet Muhammad was asked by them to do. He was elected, although he was a minority amongst them, to lead that city and formulate what is known as the first written constitution the world has known, predating the Magna Carta by a number of centuries. The concern was to end intertribal fighting, to institute rights and responsibilities for Muslims, Jews, Christians, and pagans living in the city, and to establish the first Islamic state, guaranteeing in that state security of the community, religious freedoms for all, the security of women, stable relations within Medina, and a system for protection of individuals and adjudicating all affairs. This was the foundation of a multinational, multi-faith, multi-ethnic community living in harmony and justice, setting the stage for future Islamic and other governments in this world.